Hello folks, J. Scott Phillips here, and I got home from work today, and while I was fixing dinner, I decided to catch up watching some BookTube videos. And I saw that earlier today, Steve Donahue on his channel posted a new tag, this being Tag Tuesday, and he's calling it the Star Trek Next Generation tag. And that's inspired by the fact that this is the Summer of Trek. That's this year's version of Book Trek, which is a BookTube event to get us to read Star Trek fiction that was created by Vin It Revenant Reads. And Steve is one of his co-hosts for the event this summer. And so he's promoting that, and he came up with kind of a fun tag here. I was going to say book tag, but technically not a book tag. There's one question in here, maybe two, that touch on books in some way, but really they're just questions, kind of nosy questions from Steve, based on the ship, the USS Enterprise D, and its crew, its cast of characters here. So let's just jump into it here and see what he's nosing around about here. Question number one. The Next Generation premiered in 1987 and for 7 years regularly racked up higher ratings than any other Star Trek franchise. What has been your relationship with the show? Well, the only other Star Trek franchise that had been on at that time had been the original series. And that is the show that I grew up with. I was 10 or 11 years old when that premiered, and I came in during the first season of its first runs on NBC. So I grew up with that show and loved it. It just, anything Star Trek I could get my hands on, I was watching it, reading it, looking at it, drawing it, imagining it, whatever it could, talking with my friends at school about it. It was just the best show ever so far that I could see. And so that being the show that I came up with, to me, that original series is the gold standard in my book for anything Star Trek. Has to match up to that to be as good. So, in 1987, was it? Yeah. When I heard that The Next Generation was going to be coming out, I was excited. I couldn't wait for that to come out. And at that time, I was working at the Orange County Register. I was at a newspaper here in Orange County, California. And there was another guy that I worked with. I was a designer. He was a copywriter. And he was also a Star Trek nerd. So when this new series came out, I had a pal at work to chat about with it. And so we were both excited about the show coming out. And when it finally did come out, I have to admit I was pretty disappointed. I thought that it was a little bit cheap to me that they just lifted the theme song from Star Trek The Motion Picture. I liked that music, and it seemed to fit in, and it was a nice, rousing piece of music and all that. But it just seemed like if you're going to all this expense, and I remember them talking about how expensive this show was going to be to produce, that couldn't they have stretched the budget a little bit and come up with a new theme song? But I was still happy that the show was on, and was still looking forward to it and learning about all these new characters and the new ship, all the new advances that they had made in the 100 years since Kirk's era and all that. Was really looking forward to that. But it just seemed kind of like the original series watered down. Seemed like they were kind of taking some of the same concepts and then just updressing it a little bit. And it just didn't really catch on to me. It wasn't catching me like those original series episodes were week to week. Of course, everyone talks about how The Next Generation took a couple of seasons to really find its space legs. And I agree with that. I think it did get a lot better as it went along. But it just always seemed to be more slow-paced, and I think that was part of the era that it was produced in, when we weren't so war-oriented or battle-oriented. We were kind of more, I think, in kind of a more, trying to be more of a let's talk and negotiate rather than fight things out kind of a messaging in those days. And that, to me, took a lot of the action and suspense and excitement out of Star Trek. And one of my big complaints about The Next Generation is I never really hear it talked about, but it's the music. The aside from the theme song, just the music during the episode to play off of the dramatic moments or the exciting moments or the passionate moments or whatever it was, just felt just like this watery music that was kind of far off in the distance. I can't think of, when I think of the original series music, I think of a lot of the music you could hum, you could like the fight song, dun, 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 all that kind of thing. The love theme, the da 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 da. All those had musical riffs and themes to it that are memorable. I can't think of a single one from The Next Generation. And they all seem to be about the same level of volume and pitch, and I don't know. It just didn't hit all cylinders. It hit a lot of cylinders, but not all cylinders. So I guess that's my relationship with The Next Generation. I've certainly come to like it, and I really enjoyed that last season of Picard, season 3. That one really seemed to... That one was hitting on all cylinders, if you ask me. All right, question number 2. The Enterprise D. Picards Enterprise continues the epic adventures of James Kirk's Enterprise. And the question is, did you read Next Generation books as they were coming out? And have you read many of them since? So, yeah, even though I was kind of disappointed in The Next Generation when it was first airing, I was still watching it every week and expecting it to get better, hoping that it was going to start picking up. And I was enjoying it, don't get me wrong. So, of course, when the first book came out, I bought that and tried to read that. I think I got halfway through it, which was also disappointing because, as I remember, it was a novelization of the pilot episode. And I think it was written by David Gerald, of all people. So I was expecting it to be pretty good. But as I recall, just on the first page or two, he was describing this new Enterprise, the Enterprise D, in a way to kind of conjure up its majesty and all that, but also kind of its sensual lines. And he somehow sexualized the ship somehow. And that just threw me. I didn't want to read about the ship thinking of the Enterprise D like that. But and then the episode itself, of course, just having watched it as an actual show episode, was not the type of episode that I cared for, putting mankind on trial for all its sins through history and all that. Another one of those. So I kind of gave up on that one, hoping that the next books would get better. And I don't remember that they did. I think I bought the next 2 or 3 of them and then kind of gave up on those. So I think that was our one book question out of the list here. So question number 3, the crew. The stellar bridge crew of the Enterprise D is far less human than that of the classic Enterprise. Do you deviate from the textbook human norm? And in what ways are you some sort of circus sideshow freak? So even though I think what Steve was getting at is, even though most of his viewers are human, as far as we know, how far away from the human genome might they wander, and whatever it is. So he's referring to things like surgical implants or things like that. So how much of a circus sideshow freak are you? Well, I don't have any pins in my legs or plates in my head or anything like that. About as close as I could get to any of that is pretty pedestrian, and that's just dental work. I've got a bridge and I've got some crowns, and so those are not original equipment. And other than glasses, which aren't physically adhered to me, I guess that's really it. So question number 4, Captain JeanLuc Picard is the starship captain, but could easily have followed a different path and been a professor, an archaeologist, etc. So he could have been anything. And his question here is, do you have an idea of what your dream job would be? Well, I think I was lucky and got pretty close. I've always been interested in art, and ever since I was a little kid, I would draw, starting with my favorite cartoon characters, and then I'd get more advanced, and I would watch drawing shows on TV to learn how to draw with shadow and all that. Paid a lot of attention to just artwork that came my way, and I would do a lot of copying and things like that. And then as I was reading comic books growing up, I wanted to write and draw my own comic book. So I started doing that and got into a comic strip series, kind of a Flash Gordon science fiction parody of my own that was a lot of fun. And so I would draw those myself for years and kind of pass them around with my friends just for fun. And so what's the question? Oh, so what would your dream job be? So I did get into artwork, and I was at first trying to get into illustration, but I wound up going down more the design path. And so since then, I have been an art director and creative director in advertising and marketing. So I didn't get into advertising and marketing. I fell into advertising and marketing like Picard may have fallen into being a captain, but I was still doing what I enjoyed to do. It was the artwork, the creativity, and the artwork that led me through my career path. And unless I had gone down the illustrator route more, that might have been something more along what I had originally imagined I'd wanted to do. But design has been great, and I've had a lot of fun, and here we are. So, question number 5. Will Riker, in his off hours, is unapologetically hedonistic? How much of a pleasure seeker are you, and have you ever done anything in Vegas that very much needed to stay in Vegas? Well, I am a bit of a hedonist, I guess. I do enjoy going out and having some ribald fun from time to time. But let's just say that, to quote Captain Kirk, I know a little place across town. And as far as have you ever done anything in Vegas that very much needed to stay in Vegas? Well, I guess we'll never know. If there was, it's in Vegas. So if you want to know that, you may have to go to Vegas and find out. Question number 6. Deanna Troy isn't a full telepath. So the question is, how empathetic are you? And I would say that the older I'm getting, the more empathetic I'm getting. I've always been empathetic to people close to me. I've always worried about how my friends and family have been feeling or going through things, that kind of a thing. And it always felt like an exchange. So when I was going through things, I always had friends and family that were around me. So that always seemed natural. But now as I've been getting older, I've noticed that just watching more things on TV or hearing things on the news or just seeing things in my comings and goings during the day, and I'll just hear about things that will pull my heartstrings more. And I've kind of laughed at myself sometimes for choking up about things that I would think that in my past I never really cared about so much. So how empathetic am I? I don't know. I was kind of breaking down a little bit about something stupid talking to one of my friends here recently, and they just said, well, you're Irish. That's what it is. It's just your Irish is coming out. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think it definitely has to do with just later in life, I think I've seen more things and have been through things that I can relate to people that aren't necessarily close to me, to what they're going through, and so my heart will often go out to them for things like that. Question number 7. Dr. Crusher is the first Enterprise officer to serve with her own child. Have you ever worked with one of your children, or could you, considering what pathetic losers they are? Well, I don't have any kids myself, so I've avoided that particular bullet. But I guess just to have something to talk about in this particular question here, I'll talk about working with a coworker who brought in his daughter as an intern. We had we still have an ad agency, but this was years ago. But I won't use his name. I'll just call him Thompson. We always called him by his last name, so we'll just call him Thompson for the sake of the story here. And he was kind of a loudmouth guy. He was our sales and strategic sales and promotions guy. And so he was a jolly enough guy, but he could get into these focused rants and was not so fun to be around sometimes, and would kind of tick off some of our clients from time to time, which was not good. But in general, maybe I shouldn't even say that. Anyway, we had an internship program, and he brought his own daughter in as an intern at one point. They didn't seem to get along too well, which is a little awkward in the workplace, but we all liked her, and I won't use her name, but let's call her Jenny. And so Jenny would come into our weekly status meetings and things, and her dad, we're calling him Thompson here, would give her little projects and things so she would have something to report on and try to learn the industry here. And whenever she would come in and give her report, she would always refer to her father, just like we would. We would call him by his last name. She would do the same thing. So she would say, well, Thompson asked me to do this. Thompson wanted that. Where's Thompson? Thompson says he needs the... So as far as working with kids, your own kids, that's as close as I got. I worked with a coworker's kid while he had his daughter at work that summer. So question number 8. Data is the super sophisticated android, and yet he voluntarily keeps a cat. Do you also have this serious personal failing? Well, I don't. However, I did grow up with cats. Our family always had cats around, usually one that just kept having litters of cats. So we would have this one cat, and then we'd have 4 more. And then they would trickle away for various reasons. And then another litter would show up. And then at one point, that cat moved on, shall we say, and then we just kind of ran out of those cats. So I grew up with cats, and I liked cats, but they were outdoor cats. They weren't really in the house, so it was really just a matter of keeping them fed, and that was about it. They pretty much took care of themselves and didn't really need us around anyway. We didn't have too many critters in the yard, though, so that was nice. However, since I have developed an allergy to cats, so I can't really be around cats anyway, which is fine with me because they don't like being around me in any way either. And so then finally here, question number 9, the Enterprise D's bridge crew gradually develops an excellent chemistry. Have you ever had that kind of chemistry in a work environment? And yes, I have. I think I've been pretty lucky. Almost everywhere I've worked, really. Starting back in college, I worked at Disneyland in a restaurant there in Adventureland, the River Belle Terrace, the Pancake House. And we had a great crew. We all got along real well. Well, I shouldn't say we all got along real well. There were some folks there that were a little challenging, I guess we could say. But and a lot of it was a summer job for most of us. Most of us were going to school, working our way through college and that kind of thing. So a lot of us was kind of come and go, but there were kind of a core crew of us that were there for many years, and we all got to work nice and smoothly together, and we all knew each other's jobs and could help each other out, and it really was that crew. It was like that tight-knit crew like you might expect on the Enterprise. And then years later, I was working at the Orange County Register in their marketing department. It was a smaller place there, but people didn't come and go there so much. We were a smaller, tighter crew. And that was my first professional design job there, working in the marketing department for the newspaper. And in fact, the copywriter I mentioned earlier that was another Star Trek fan, that's where we were working. And after that, I moved on to Disneyland Creative Services as a designer there. And that was a great crew. The company itself posed a lot of challenges. It took us forever to get anything approved or done or signed off or budgets for. But all the people that I worked with, it was a very creative group, and that was great. So yeah, we all knew each other there and would help each other out and had a lot of fun. And both from my days back at Disneyland in college and beyond, a lot of us are still in touch with each other and close friends and still get together. So kind of like the original series characters, they just kept getting back together and back together and back together. Now, we don't get back together and work together anymore, but we're still close. And I guess that kind of wraps up the book tag here, or the Star Trek Next Generation tag. So it was a lot of fun. Well, doggone it, I got this video all put together and realized I had not tagged anybody in it. So I know Steve has already tagged all of his fellow BookTube co-hosts. So I'm going to tag Randy Ray, the literate Texan. I think this book tag has not started to make the rounds quite yet. And I don't think that Randy has been tagged yet. So Randy, I know you're a big Star Trek fan yourself. So let's see if you might want to jump in and do a response to this yourself. And I hope so, and look forward to seeing it. And now back to the show. If you've got any comments or questions about what I've had to say here, might be fun to chat a little further about down in the comments below. So there you have it. It was a lot of fun to do. Thanks, Steve, for the book tag, for the tag, and we'll chat again soon. Thanks a lot.